kommer nu. Vi vil lave nogle tests af nogle forskellige måder at filme på. Vi er ikke helt sikre på, hvordan det skal se ud. Filmen må gerne have en lidt kaotisk stil, så derfor så prøver vi alle mulige forskellige måder, man kan manipulere med billedet på, uden at det ses.
Den hedder Milo. Den kommer fra Sverige. Den er bygget i England. Den gør det muligt for os at bevæge kameraet i rummet, fuldstændig styret af computeren. Og den kan så flytte sig selv i forhold til kameraet, uden at flytte kameraet, eller omvendt flytte kameraet rundt i rummet, så vi kan få det ind og ud af computeren og bearbejde. Så til sådan en test som det her er det et fantastisk instrument.
Hvad er det?
Jamen, jeg har de store forhåbninger til, at det her bliver fantastisk, men jeg ved ikke, hvor meget jeg har at have mine forhåbninger i. Det er jo så vist sig.
Hvad er det? Hvad er det?
Det er.
Jeg har slet ikke lagt mærke til, at der var det i, tror jeg.
Jeg vil gøre, de skriger.
Gøg.
De skal dø.
Hvad mener du?
Hvert 100 år, hvert 300 år, så er der et, der bliver sådan. Kun et. For hvert 100 år. Der får lov til at leve et. Hvis de endelig slår ro, så kvæler de hinanden. Alligevel. Det er jo også derfor, de skriger sådan.
Skriger de?
Clearly there was a naturalistic level, which is a naturalistic semi-documentary, or as close as you can make documentary in a building that's wrapped up in black plastic in daytime is meant to be night and whatever, but you know what I mean. Naturalism.
Eden was the catalyst that triggered your fear. You jumped to conclusions and tied the emotional event with the place. When you feel threatened, it's natural to react.
Then you've got the visualization scenes, which are the beautiful monumental scenes. There are also anxiety montages, which is something developed out of our pre-production, and I eventually found these lenses that have been used on other films called lens babies, which are actually a cheap, but I think really organic way of messing the image up and breaking down the focus levels, but getting images into a more deconstructed, decomposed, abstract area, but you can still control where you want the viewer to look. We have transition from handheld to linear movements, which we have a kind of underlying philosophy about why we do it. But basically, technically, it means the camera has to move from a slight simulated handheld movement, which Peter York will be able to tell you about, but which we simulated on my body movement, and then going into an absolutely smooth movement towards whatever we're pointing the camera at.
All you feel is a pleasant warmth and heaviness. Your breath is deep, regular, easy.
It's high-speed shots. We shoot, generally the film is shot on a red camera, 2 red cameras, but it's also shot on a phantom camera, which is also digital, 2K digital camera that can capture up to 1,000 frames a second as opposed to 24, 25 frames a second, which is a complicated setup. You have to have a special operator in, it's a special camera, but it creates these extraordinary images which you see in the black and white in the beginning, for example, when you slow down film time to exactly the speed of the last monster.
Well, just as Lars has worked many times with Anthony Mantle before, he's also worked almost every time on every film. He has some technical stuff to develop and some visual ideas that he wants to try out. And he, almost every time, he works together with Peter York. And Peter York is a wonderful nerd. He's extremely nerdy, and he's very, very savvy. He knows his thing. And I think he's one of his kind in the world, and I don't think you can find people who can, every time you go to him and say, what if we invent this thing that can do, and he just starts thinking and he comes up with machines or computer programs or ideas, or he finds the right people to train a fox or paint a whatever. He's Lars's buddy on the whole technical stuff, and he's been for years. He went through the storyboard with the storyboard artist and Lars for a week or so, and he made Lars go through every scene and every picture and making all the decisions together with Lars. And that was a period where Lars wasn't feeling very well, so he was a huge part of that. Yeah.
Vi kigger lidt på, hvordan det ser ud, når dårdyr føder. Det er faktisk, vi er over i et rådyr nu, som også findes i Amerika. Så kan du se dernede, hvad det så bliver til. My key job is to take ideas out of Lars's head and try to put them on paper and try and pass this information to other people, like the animal trainers, the special effect makeup guys, the motion control guys, all the people who are involving in making the shot happen. Because if Lars was supposed to give this briefing to everybody, he wouldn't be doing anything else than talking to all these people. So we have like a way of communicating, and we use the sketches for that because it's very easy to talk from a sketch and then break it down into the different technical solutions. The famous Disney deer Bambi was really a roe deer in the original story.
Okay.
Disney changed Bambi's species to the white-tailed deer because too few Americans would know what a roe deer was.
Det er klart. Og det var et rådyr oprindeligt. Peter Hjort I worked with for a long time also, and we done a lot of special effects, computer design stuff. We started working together on Dancer in the Dark, and yes, extremely loyal and very, very good. I would, if it hadn't been for him, there was a lot of these things that couldn't have been done. So he's a good man. It's the last resort, when you go to him and he can, do magic to the images.
The funny thing is that there's some shots that he can tell you on the first day of sketch drawing how it's supposed to look, and he can even do a rough sketch, and down to every little detail he can tell you this is how the shot should be. And it's very seldom that that we deviate a lot from that. We worked with a little bit of storyboards and stuff, and then we did a test, which was very important. And we tried to do something, just a small part of the film, but with the real technology at full resolution, as a real film shoot, and even with real actors, even really good actors that have a psychology like the actors that was anticipated for the final film. For the test, we also did some ultra high-speed shooting, and we found out what the challenges of that were. One of them being lighting and having enough power for all the lights. A simple thing like that was really complicated for our test because we were in the woods and we needed a lot of power, and we had generator trucks burning out in the middle of the shoot because we were putting so much light on the scene that the generator stopped working. So we learned that we had to really plan this high-speed shooting, and also Lars could see the visual aspects of this, and he really liked the look of this 1,000 frame per second digital camera. I would say it's not a big difference between the Acorn scene we shot for the test and the scene that is in the movie, except that we did some different animation, it's another lead actor in the picture, but essentially it's the same shot. So when we did that shot on the shoot, I had actually done it once before.
Peter Hjort, an extraordinary fellow. He's such a creative doctor of images, and I've worked with him a lot over the years, and with Lars and with different directors. And I've learned a lot from him, so I feel more comfortable in a lot of situations, but it's always nice to have Peter there. He also was there for us so that when I was bound by the actors and working with the A camera, working with Lars and working with the actors, he could then break out together with Stefan, who was also working as a second operator occasionally, and they could go off and do some of these time-consuming shots that he knows all about that aren't anything to do with actors, but they're to do with effects and CGI. It's excellent. It worked very well. He's very good at going in there and controlling the degree of effect to how much it becomes an effect and how much it becomes camouflaged as something that's magical, but it doesn't look like an effect. And I like him for that, and because if they're too excited about effects all the time, they become effects. They tend to dominate everything else. You're talking about acting as well. It tends to become something else, and it's finding that balance, and I think he's very good at that.
We did one day of studio shooting, because it was impractical to put the green screen for the falling acorns, have that standing outside. That's one of the things we learned from the test, that a big green screen can be a challenge to handle outside if you have to light it and so on. And also we did this shot with the naked men on a green screen and some other small elements. So we did a little bit of studio shooting, but on the stage we did only 1 day of work, and I would say normally for a film like that it would have been, for a movie like Mandalay we did almost 2 weeks of just visual effects shooting on the stage. So to do just 1 day of shooting and then the rest on the real location was really nice.
I've been mentally much weaker on this film, and that means also that the picture side of the film is not as precise as I had wanted it. First of all, this thing that I normally would have operated the camera myself, which for me was a big thing, and I had to give it up. I didn't have the mental strength to do directing actors and filming at the same time. Yeah, I would say that I worked on 40% of my potential on this film. It was very hard.
We're used to working together in that way. I'm quite happy to share. There's not many I do that with, but if I feel they know what they want to do, and certainly Lars knows what he wants to do with the camera, I'm quite happy to share with him. And also operating costs what it does, and however much people talk about it and mumble about why you do that, for me it's nothing to do with that at all. It's about making the film. You make the film the director wants. In this case, we started off imagining we would probably operate together. He'd do a bit and I'd do a bit, and we'd see how it progressed. And quite early into the film, he just decided to pull back. He's done a few. You can see a few scenes. We are different. We operate differently. I try to simulate him, but it was harder for him this time. I think physically, it was harder for him this time, and so we decided I'd try and do the most of it. Always the same with Lars. He'll have an idea that may seem simple, or that's great, why didn't we think of that before? And it's quite concise and clear what he wants. And then when you start to develop it, and together with people like Peter Yord or Stefan or the people that support me, and together we sit down and try and work out how to do it, invariably his ideas need really sophisticated solutions. But that's the fascinating thing about it.
Da jeg fik det her manuskript i hånden, eller den første pitch, var det jo faktisk bare en ganske kort beskrivelse af, hvordan historien en gang ville komme til at udfolde sig, så tænkte jeg, at det her det er nok det mest spændende, eller mulighed for det mest spændende lydarbejde, musikarbejde, jeg har været ude for. Vi har prøvet at finde en anden måde at lave en gyserfilms lydside. Det er jo heller ikke en rigtig gyserfilm, kan man sige, men vi vil prøve at finde en måde at skabe ubehaget, som ligger i historien og hele det her psykologiske lag, at tingene er bare forkerte, og det presser en. Det vil vi lave med en blanding af lyddesign og en form for musikalsk underlægningsmusik, som kom til at bestå af ikke-instrumenter. Instrumenter, som vi selv har gået og opfundet. Det er simpelthen... Det har vi brugt rigtig meget. At puste i de her. Både når de kan og ikke kan. Nu går det rigtig skidt i dag her. Det er... Konditionen, vi satte op for os selv, var, at vi skulle bruge organisk materiale. Vi må bruge sten, vi må bruge vand, vi må bruge stemmer. Så gik vi jo i gang med at samle alle mulige mærkelige ting ind. Vi havde det her, vi havde dagens lyd, så vi mødtes en halv time hver dag, mig og Lars, og det gjorde vi et par måneder, hvor vi så simpelthen slog på en sten, brækkede nogle grene, skurede med sten mod sten, fløjtede i bladstrå. Der har vi som en af de gennemgående lyde, vi har brugt som... Det er en kombination af en masse... I virkeligheden en masse, blade, som vi har stået og blæst i forskellige typer. Og så har jeg loopet dem og lagt dem sammen til en lyd, men så blev den samlede lyd, kunne man lægge i forskellige lag. Sådan i det var ikke hver dag, at vi troede på det. Det var det ikke, fordi det var ikke lige interessant. Men langsomt fik vi ligesom bevæget os ind i, hvilke typer lyde, der var interessante, og så fik vi ligesom skåret os ned til at gå efter nogle specifikke ting. Der har vi så puttet ind i sampleren og spillet på alle mulige sjove lyde. Det her, vi lige sad med her, var en enkelt lyd, som jeg har lavet med hestehår og hen over nogle tynde grene, som så i virkeligheden er sådan meget, meget høj lyd. Den originale lyd er oppe i den der ende, og når man så tager den langt ned i nogle oktaver, så bliver det noget mere så dystert. På et tidligt tidspunkt snakker vi om at optage kroppens indre også. Så der havde jeg gang i at sluge en lille mikrofon, få den godt ned i her. Så det ubehag, det gav, og de bevægelser, de lyde, der er derinde, har jeg så optaget og samlet også. Men det behøver egentlig ikke at blive kørt så meget ned, fordi det virker ret effektivt og ret ubehageligt i sig selv. Det lyder, det er jo sådan strømmende blod, og man har en fornemmelse af åndedrættet, der ligger og kører i baggrunden, som jeg så brugt i for eksempel visualiseringsscenen, hvor hun hopper tilbage eller hvor han taler hende tilbage.
Imagine you arrive at Eden through the woods. Tell me what you see.
I'm at the bridge. It's evening. Almost no birds can be heard.
Epilogen og prologen er Händels Rinaldo, eller en part derfra, som vi havde ledt meget efter. En arie, som skulle ligesom være det her følelsesfulde musik til de super slow billeder. Og der har vi fundet en version, som Bartoli havde indspillet, og den var så blevet brugt i klipningen. Men den var altså tempoet var helt fantastisk, men den var lige lovlig pæn i virkeligheden. Den var lige storladen nok, og vi kunne godt tænke os en anden version. Det kommer an på, om vi kan holde, eller de kan holde tempoet. Så det kan godt være, at det bliver klippet sammen flere. Lars, du må ikke være deroppe. Nej. Det går jo helvede til.
Ja, jeg kan godt mærke det.
Ja.
Jeg er nødt til at være lidt høflig, når der er kamera på.
Vi fandt en metode, hvordan vi kunne finde, eller få optaget det med samme tempo. Altså vi lavede et click track, som fulgte, altså det er et meget rubato, sådan et, klassisk stykke, så det går lidt op og ned i tempo, så man kan ikke bare finde, hvad tempo det går i, og så indspille det der. Så vi lavede simpelthen et flydende click track, der sagde op og ned i tempo. Og det havde Bjarte så i ørerne, så han kunne dirigere orkestret, så det ramte samme tid og på de samme cue-punkter, som i den version, vi havde brugt i masken.
Så det var en veldig skizofren opplevelse, hvor man virkelig opdager at hjernen er delt i to. Jeg synes det var en stor og flott utfordring, men det gikk super. This was the first time. How does it feel?
It feels okay, but I mean, and I guess it feels more roboto because it's not our own roboto.
Yeah, that's it. It's not our own roboto. Not yet.
Men det bliver lidt stift, når man spiller. Det var vi godt klar over. Så til sidst så bad Bjarte om at få klikket væk, og så prøvede de at lave en version uden klik. Og der havde de simpelthen spillet det så mange gange med klikket, at de faktisk ramte det ekstremt præcist i forhold til, hvordan den originale version var. Så det var jo virkelig fantastisk.
Men hvis vi var raskere, skulle klikken helt svagt.
Og i den fri, eller hvad? Ja, jo.
Og så gjør vi simpelthen sånn
at du
så det jeg kan starte,
tæt på.
Ja, så det starter riktig, og så har jeg en liten referanse, men jeg forsøker
Og være fri. Ja, simpelthen.
Det lyder lidt for pænt, altså.
Lidt for pænt?
Ja. Kan I ikke lave noget mere larm?
Ja, jo.
Ja. Bare en lille smule. Fordi det er ligesom...
Det er sådan generelt, eller?
Jeg ved ikke, om det er noget, man kan gøre med buen, eller et eller andet, der bare sådan det... Ja, tak. Ja, lige præcis. Men bare et eller andet, så det er næsten for pænt, altså.
Efter jeg snakkede med Bjarte, violinisten, som havde set det, fik jeg indtryk af, at han var meget, meget rystet bagefter. Og så tænkte jeg, at det er vigtigt for mig at vide, altså lige præcis hvad der sker. Men det er vigtigt for mig at vide, lige hvor i musikken det sker. Det vil ikke nødvendigvis gavne mig at se, hvad der sker. Fordi måske skal der være en kontrast mellem det, man hører og det, man ser. Så jeg tror ikke, det vil berige min sang på nogen måde. Måske tværtimod. Og derfor så lød jeg være. Og så glæder jeg mig bare til premieren.
Der sker alle mulige unævnlige ting.
Ja, lige præcis.
Ja.
Og så tænkte jeg bare, jeg er jo mor til 2 børn og sådan noget, så er en sart sjæl.
Så kan du sagtens tage det, hvis du er mor til 2
Nå,
børn.
okay.
Jeg er jo far til 4 børn. Jeg er virkelig nemt ved det. Det er kun de barnløse, der er sentimentale, ikke?
Nå, okay. Så det er ikke så smidt. Men,
Det var ikke det, Bjarte sagde. Nå. Hun har jo en fantastisk smuk stemme, så hun indgik jo i vores score sampler. Du kunne lave fra så dybt du kan, uden at anstrenge din stemme.
bare et
Ja, og så tage en kvint op, indtil du når til dit der, hvor du synes, nu det bliver for højt. Ja, præcis. Og det har vi også brugt på loftet, er hun den svævende dame, der kommer ind med toner. Den største udfordring ved at lave det her lydarbejde har været ikke at ramme en kliché for tydeligt, sådan så at man at det var fuldstændig genkendeligt som noget, man har set før. Så man ikke prøvede at gøre det uhyggeligt, sådan wow! Altså, fordi det er ikke det, ideen er med lydsiden. Altså, ideen er at lægge det her psykiske pres eller ubehag. Og det synes jeg, der er less is more.
This is Eden, our little cabin in the woods, which is where they go to after the tragedy, the death of the child. And this is a cabin which is actually 100 years old, and I found in Norway, and this took it apart and transported it here. You want to come inside?
Callie, I worked with Callie also since Dancer in the Dark. I think I worked with him early on. I made a lot of films with Callie, and I'm very happy for his work. He can, with very little, he can achieve a lot.
Lars, are we still looking loosely for what could be any scene? Or are we thinking?
Yeah. But right now, I think this little opening in the woods could be here.
Okay.
The reason why it's they have to kind of be different, all the locations. So that's why we have to sit also, look at some pictures and say, how are we going to model this? Yeah.
To find the spot, which was very difficult. You shouldn't think it was difficult to find a spot in the forest where there's an oak tree, but it was. And we went for many location scouts, and we ended up finding this place without the oak tree. So he built the oak tree, but only the lower part. The rest is done in CGI.
The location for the cabin we scouted extensively because we needed a very distinct layout, and it all had somehow to fit together. And I think we looked at about, I don't know, 25 different little patches until we finally found this one. The good thing about these cabins, they are almost like a kit, you can say, because all the logs are numbered, and we just put it on a truck, drove it down here to Germany, and put it up very quickly.
First of all, it was expensive to build a new one, but you can't give it the patina, that it gets from being a real old hut. No, that was a very good idea.
This is the bedroom. This is an extension we actually built to the original cabin. So we had a little more space to film, and it also called for a separate bedroom in a way.
This was a wall, and this was like two rooms, and we cut up this opening here.
I became afraid, and I stopped writing.
What was different the last time?
You can say the veranda is typically American. It gives it a little bit sort of a cowboy style or a western style. And usually in America they use round logs, and our logs are square, but I thought the guy who built it was a Norwegian immigrant. So he sort of built it a little bit, which I'm sure they did, in his own style.
We had to place the cabin there, and that, of course, you had to take a truck in and put it there. And the nature had to grow around it. So we had to place it there in the winter, and then came spring, and that's when all the nature is supposed to come up around the hut, the cabin, and it started doing that, and then suddenly I got this phone call from my German co-producer saying, we have trouble. And I was like, oh, what is it? It's a bird. It's nesting very, very close to the cabin and the location that we had spent months finding. We have to shoot somewhere else because you're not allowed to be within a radius of 1,000 meters of this bird nesting. So what I did was I sent Lars in his camper to Germany again to go on location scouting that same weekend and found another spot.
This stupid stork that suddenly decided to build a nest where we had just made a road to take in the hut. So, but we found another place, and there were no stork, or anyway, no stork that we saw. So.
With some directors, you know exactly what the angle is going to be and how it's going to be filmed. But with Lars, it's something about just preparing generally for the scene. You know, when you have the grinding wheel going through Willem Dafoe's leg, we just figure, well, we don't even have to really almost discuss it with Lars. We need a fake leg somehow. We know that, and we need a fake grinding wheel, and we need some different things, and we just bring it along, and we take it from there. Yeah. But of course, we explain to Lars, this is what we're going to bring. So I went down to Germany, and I cast his leg. So we had his leg in silicone, and we made it sort of nice and soft and with a bone inside, so it could move about a bit. Willem's pants go down to here, and she drills a hole right through the silicone, which kind of moves very much like human skin would, as you can see here. You're really secure that he'll only use the good stuff. Yeah, that's quite clear. That because for some directors you do have to worry if you film something that doesn't look good, say it's too close. But Lars is very visual like that, and he, so we feel very safe with filming things. Lars likes to do long takes, so we try to make it easy for him to film long takes with the different effects.
The scene with the leg was really long, actually, but cut very clever, so everything works. But there were big passages, that you could say that they maybe not work as good as they could have done with the fake leg, because it was not meant for that picture. So, but he's really good at choosing everything that's right, even from a long shoot.
And then, of course, we had the whole thing about this grinding wheel being strapped to Willem's leg. So what we did is we made two with different weights, two fake grinding wheels that are really lightweight. The real one weighed about 10 kilos, and this one here weighs hardly anything. And then we did another one, which is the one we used, like this, that weighs 4 kilos. So it's lighter than the real one, but still kind of heavy. This was then strapped to Willem's leg under the pants, kind of like this. And he would carry that around. Okay, stop.
we had a lot of stuff with the deer.
Yeah, and a lot of talk with the animal trainers about how we could attach this fake features to the real deer.
He had a lot of requirements about how we could, what we could put on.
How heavy it could be, and
yeah, I think it was 1 kilo max.
Yeah,
and he was training in Prague somewhere, I think, with this deer with. It was a Kermit
a harness with a frog. Actually, maybe not Kermit, but a fat frog in a way.
Yeah, a toy frog. And it was, he sent these scary photos of a deer with a harness and a toy frog in it.
Yeah.
So the animal could get used to carrying something around. And of course, when we got there, the deer still freaked out pretty bad. We ended up using a nylon stocking to put the animal in, simply because it was very strong and it would hold well. Because the deer would jump a couple of meters into the air when it got it on, so it had to be pretty strong. And this was secured to the harness, and the rest was fixed by Peter Hjort digitally afterwards. So the important thing for us with this was that the head sort of could swing like this, so that when it ran, this would sort of swing about. And that you really do see in the film, that the head is swinging like this. With some things, Lars was very specific. For example, the boy falling out of the window. He wasn't interested in getting a very articulate, realistic doll with a realistic face that looked like his. And for that, he was only interested in getting something for a very wide shot that could work on a distance. So the head and the hands and the feet for the baby doll was just like a mannequin.
Yeah.
And the only thing we worked on there was getting a realistic body that could move realistically. This is the dummy we made of the boy that falls out the window, and it's not a very exact doll. The head is very bad, and it's basically just made to sort of move like a real child would, so it can sort of fall in a realistic manner. When we read in the script the scene where she cuts off her clitoris, we of course also asked Lars what he wanted, and we kind of figured that he'd say that he didn't really want to see it just as scissors disappearing between her legs. But to our surprise, he wanted to see the actual cutting of the clitoris. So we figured we'd do that in 2 steps. One step is to use a body double and having fake scissors, and then of course her real genitals. And the next part of the scene would be to have real scissors and then a silicone prop of her genitals. And that's why we made this one here. And the way it was done is we had Charlotte's body double come to our shop, and we made this cast of her. The area that had the clitoris would be something we could change, so you could do several takes of it without changing the whole lower body. So you just sort of have a little changeable piece you could put in and film it again. This is a cast of her, and then the silicone prop we made looks like this. And that was what was used. Then when they were filming it, they were sort of moving the legs about a little bit like this. And also the piece would have blood tubing, would have blood coming in here, so blood could flow out, of course, when she cut. Anything where we have been involved is intense to watch, but in a very different way than it is for other people. Because we always sit and just look at our own effects and how they work. It's a little difficult to, you sort of look for the mistakes and what you could have done different. So in that sense, it's the scenes that involve our effects are always a little difficult to sort of separate yourself from the work you've done and just watch it. So I was just looking and thinking, cool lenses, and that it worked. That was really, I'm sorry, I wish I could have felt different, but that's the way it is. It's our work, and it's the first time we see it. So the premiere is not a time to sort of take the film in as a film. And also I would say that I think that we're probably the only people who really watched the cutting of the clitoris, because we were watching how did it work? Everybody else were going like this, but not us. We were watching.
My name is Ota Bareš and I own some company in Prague and we supply animal for filming, for movies and for commercial. I know some small zoo garden and we have a couple of animal and also with me works other 4 guys which are also trainers. Main famous animal I guess are ravens, which we have flock of them and we use them for feature films from different scene like flying from one place to another or be somewhere, sit somewhere, landing somewhere or landing from something, action like this. But they are very clever because we starting work with them from babies, so they like people.
You know, it's all problem solving and it's all kind of ridiculous, fun toys that you got to root somehow with some sort of emotional commitment. So I like that. Although that bird just bit the shit out of me, I can't tell you. It was, that was one of the more. This film wasn't always comfortable.
That's a big challenge for me, for us, because there are 3 animals like birds, crow, fox and deer, and they should be together. Specialty deer which should have some stuff on his back, which was a big challenge for us. The main problem with her is because we don't have time starting work with baby, which we can have from very small baby. So she was like 8 months old if we starting, and the animal is not so good with people. Like if you have the animal from babies, they follow you, and born with people, it's the basic things. It's more easier because he know people, he know apartments, everything.
When I read the script and saw that it involved some forest animals, I was very happy because I knew Ota already. It was just very clear to me that we had to get hold of Ota and find him and find out whether he was available, because I knew that he had been working with like forest animals before and that he had experience in working with animals that basically can't be tamed, like the fox.
In the beginning, we just starting like catch her and put her the collar on neck and walk with her on the leash, which we spent many days on this. And then if she's starting to be fine with this leash, we just put on her some harness. And we did that every day, twice in a day for a couple of minutes, and then we do that longer and longer. And afterwards, we put on this harness some things, some toy, which looks a little bit like small baby deer, and we should do that every day, many weeks. But in the beginning, she was very crazy and upset because it's not comfortable for animal like that. Put something on his body.
Yeah, but in practice it was Peter Hjort who did most of the work with the animals, and he was a good friend of Otis, and they worked tremendously. Very, very professional animal caretaker.
We have here through three deer because in the beginning we have two for choose which one should be better, and now I keep them because they are feel much more better if they have break like be in group, so that's why.
He also sort of asked to have a large part of the animal stuff taken to the second unit, which is like a smaller film crew working alongside the big film crew, which means that we could be a very few people around the camera and we could have some very rigorous procedures.
It depends with what kind of animal, like for example with ravens or crow on this project, it's important not to have food and drinks on set because they know that immediately and will eat everything, and because we did all this action for food, so it's important for us keep them hungry a little bit.
Ota really has this ability to tell people exactly the limits of what he can do with his animals, which is very good, because some people may want to appear professional, like I can do everything with these animals, but Ota is not like that. He's more like the opposite. He's a professional because he says, there's no way I can do this with my animals. And then you work your way to a solution.
We prepared the fox for tomorrow, which we will do some action like she's biting herself, and so we should keep her a little bit hungry. So we train her a little bit like a cat. She's trained for buzz, and she can stay, sit, but it depends how hungry she is. If it's too hungry and prepared for buying itself, it's more aggressive and wild. For this movie, we have prepared some pieces of beef, and we put the meat on his legs. Below this, then you can see it, and she's starting bite that, and we put on her also some artificial blood, and that looks very good. So. Zůstaň, stay.
They used animals in a very mild way, you know, not by surprising them or anything. It was kind of, they were trained to do exactly what they did. It was surprisingly easy to work with these animals.
They needed me to compose a proof of the evil nature of woman. It was an indictment of the female nature, drawing on any source from Western civilization going back in time.
Our job was to find the worst examples of material that at a certain time had been used in witch hunts, for instance, and all the negative things that have been said about women, which is not so easy to find because there are a few, of course, horrific examples where the witch hammer, which is a book that was written by some Catholic priests on how to interrogate and to torture and to find out if these women had, you know, a connection to the devil, which, of course, for me is, I think, as ridiculous as for anybody today.
of course, you can also do the opposite. There are also a lot of stories about women being the good and men being the evil. Here we chose to go that way because it was the female character's subject in her thesis that she's writing up in Eden. So we needed pictures and we needed fragments of text, and we had I think a historical research done. We had a journalist who did some research for us, and we had an assistant working very long on the subject.
Satan's church.
Satan, Jesus.
Nature is Satan's church.
This kind of research is best to do by going backwards, step by step. I started out with the more modern sources I could find, and then I got quotes from earlier sources, looked into them, started moving backwards, finding more and more. The surprising thing was that when you start moving backwards in time, you find that the modern texts are actually, they echo the earlier texts. It's like a deep stream of the same kind of ideas about woman and the evil nature of woman.
Women do not control their own bodies. Nature does. I have it in writing in my books.
I pick up a story or some research material that is provoking me. That means that all this witch material is, of course, provoking me because for me it's nonsense. But I liked it to be in the film because it opens up a discussion, and I'm trying to do it as convincing as I can. You know, I did Breaking the Waves, for instance, and I don't believe that there will be bells in the sky. You know, and I don't believe that you can kind of fuck your way to heaven or create miracles. I don't believe in that, and that was a provocation because I am, or it was anyway, very atheistic, and then it was interesting to take these things up again, you know, and the same with the witch side of the women. It was a provocation to myself that I used this theme in the film.
You can also interpret this thesis that she is working on and her being evil as her having read all this material, taking all this in as we as women have for thousands and thousands of years, and that somehow it's in me. I'm a chauvinist, 90%. You are, everybody is, because it's in us, and I think it can be seen as a picture of that. Of her being, or having absorbed all these theses about women being evil and these writings about women's sexuality being evil, and because she has such a big guilt about what happened, she absorbs it that way.
Hit me.
What?
Hit me so it hurts.
No.
Hit me, please.
No.
I have an idea that women are more scared about their sexuality than men. Maybe it's not true, but that was anyway the thesis again that I used in the film.
If human nature is evil, then that goes as well for the nature
of the women.
Very many of these, even old sources, agree that woman is a pure piece of nature. Woman is ruled by impulse, by instinct, and by desire. And this is beyond her rational control. She is complete nature and linked to nature. So to some degree, you have to say that, well, there is a kernel of truth. Indeed, woman is in some ways unknown to herself. A woman's body is beyond her own control. She swells with water, and she bleeds, and she conceives, and she gives birth. And this is not something that is done by decision. It is her body driving her. So the step is very short from that to saying that all this natural force, it's uncontrollable, therefore woman is uncontrollable.
The literature that you used in your research was about evil things committed against women, but you read it as proof of the evil of women?
It would be ridiculous to say that women are more evil than men. I don't think so. But on the other hand, I wouldn't agree to the opposite, that men are more evil than women.